Hi, my name is Tiffany Crouch, and I'm continuing to read Stowaway by John David Anderson, and I'm going to be starting from Chapter 2. Chapter 2, The Ones Left Behind. Like every other 10-year-old kid he'd ever met, Leo was fascinated by outer space. Right up until the moment his father told him that's where they were going. Because that's when Leo realized he wasn't coming back. Back to the house on Briarwood Lane. Red brick front with a fireplace that still burned actual wood and doors that you had to open by hand. An unmotorized swing set in the backyard next to a hydroponic garden that produced plump tomatoes and blood-red strawberries nurtured by a sun that still managed to pierce the polluted haze layered thick by the excavators working around the clock 100 miles away. The driveway, cracked and colored with chalk. It was the house Leo grew up in. The house where he lost his first tooth, tucking it under his pillow in exchange for a crisp $10 bill. The same house where his mother once burned Thanksgiving dinner so badly it set off the smoke alarm. It was the only home he'd ever known. Still, Leo might have gone quietly if it weren't for the cat. A charcoal-colored bundle of fur and mischief named Amos, who had more toes than normal. He was still a kitten when Leo had been born, and the two had grown up side by side. Dr. Fender waited till the last minute to deliver the news, knowing it would break Leo's heart. "I'm sorry, Leo. No pets allowed on board." "No, no way," Leo said, shaking his head for emphasis. "He can come with. He can sleep in my bunk with me. He can eat my leftovers. He won't be any trouble, I promise." "There are rules. Besides, how's he going to chase birds on board a star cruiser? He'll be happier here, don't you think?" "I think we'd all be happier here," Leo protested. "I don't see why we even have to go." What followed was pouting, crying, the slamming of a bedroom door. An hour later, 10-year-old Leo, red-faced, defeated, slipped out in search of Amos, finding the cat happily napping in the backyard. He curled up next to it and scratched its scruff, eliciting a satisfied purr. He knew why. His father had explained it. How his ship had literally come in, how the Ikari recognized his contributions to advancing the practical applications of Ventasium and offered him a commission as a science officer aboard a vessel bound for other planets suspected of having significant deposits of the precious stuff, how this was his chance, their chance, to contribute to the Coalition's mission, the promise of peace and stability, not just on Earth, but across the entire galaxy. And Leo understood. Sort of, but that didn't mean he had to like it. In fact, he swore not to. That evening, Amos was deposited into the wrinkled hands of Mrs. Tinsley, the next-door neighbor, who already had 2 cats of her own and was too old to be shooting off into outer space anyhow. Instead, she and Amos would just curl up in that rocking chair and wait for the sky to fall, she said. Leo told her he'd rather stay and watch the sky fall, too. His father told him to go and pack his suitcase. They bolted toward the bridge, Leo doing his best to keep stride with his brother, his heart hammering, already wheezing from the effort, until he saw Gareth pull up just outside one of the 3 entrances to the bridge, peering in. Leo squeezed his head in beside his brothers to get a better view. There stood Captain Sato and most of the crew, each member wielding whatever they could find to use as a weapon: pipes, knives, wrenches. Tex held a blowtorch in his giant blue fist. Lieutenant Berg held a length of chain. They looked like one of those Earth gangs from 100 years ago, the kind that would rumble in parking lots. The Dejarik raiding party had stripped them of their real weapons, taking them along with the Ventasium cores. Only Captain Sato still had a gun, an old-fashioned pistol, bullets, not energy bolts, an artifact from another age. The crew made a wall, shoulder to shoulder with their captain at the fore. Leo was about to join them when Gareth grabbed a fistful of shirt, pulling him back. "Stay right here, out of sight." "But we should—" "No, stay put." That's when it hit him, what his brother already knew. This wasn't a rescue ship. This wasn't his father, somehow escaped from his Dejarik captors, returning with help. If so, Captain Sato wouldn't be guarding the bridge with an antique handgun and a wrench-wielding posse of desperate crewmates. "You sure it's not the Dejarik?" Leo fretted. Gareth didn't have an answer, but one came in the form of a booming voice echoing down the halls. "Look at this! A welcome party!" Definitely not Dejarik. The translator ship implanted just behind Leo's ear did a fair job of turning alien speech to English, but you could always tell when it was filtered through the translator. No, the voice Leo heard was a human speaking Leo's own tongue. What he saw stepping through the main corridor onto the bridge was, in fact, two humans walking side by side, and just behind them... "What is that?" Leo whispered. Leo had come face to face with Ikari and Dejariks, Territrans, Joral, and the Adiran. He'd seen hollows and vids of dozens of other alien species. But the thing towering behind the two human intruders wasn't part of Leo's year-long unit on alien cultures. He surely would have remembered reading about this. A beast with a short snout on an ox-shaped head with two curled ram-like horns on either side. A thick neck led to a hulking body, brilliant in bulk and covered in a thick coat of mottled gray fur and brown fur. The creature walked slightly hunched on massive legs and had shrewd yellow eyes too small for its face. At the very least, Leo would have remembered the arms. All four of them. The creature was covered in a robe, a dingy white with sleeves for its many appendages. The robe almost made the hulking creature comical, and the way the alien scratched the back of its head with its lower left hand gave the impression that it had little interest in being there. Leo's eyes darted back to the two humans, dressed much differently from their four-armed companion. The dark-skinned female, who couldn't have been too much older than Gareth, wore a stiff black tunic that stretched up to her chin, brass buttons snapping it together, black trousers, and knee-high boots that clicked along the floor. A holster on her belt held a sleek-looking silver pistol, matching the silver of the cape that came down over only one shoulder, concealing most of her right arm. But it was the girl's left arm that caught Leo's attention. Whereas the creature behind her had limbs to spare, half the girl's left arm was missing, replaced by a titanium prosthesis that started at her elbow and ended in a wicked-looking four-pronged claw, all metal, no skin. Her glossy black hair was pulled into a complicated braid that pendulated as she walked. She had to be the one in charge. It couldn't possibly be the man standing beside her, wearing raggedy blue jeans with patched knees and a pair of filthy high-top sneakers. He was older, close to Leo's father's age. His burnt orange hair was cropped short and tight. He wore a light leather jacket over a maroon-colored t-shirt that said Dr. Pepper in slanted script. The name sounded familiar. Something from an old song, maybe? Like the girl next to him, he was packing heat, two pistols riding in holsters on his hips. Only the monster in the bathrobe was unarmed, though Leo realized that wasn't the best choice of words. Leo knew immediately who they were, or at least what they were. Carrying weapons but wearing no uniforms or insignias, clearly not Dejarik and definitely not Coalition. Boarding a ship without permission, and sauntering right onto the bridge like they owned the place. They could only be pirates. Leo started to say as much to Gareth, but got up the pipe before his brother's hand clamped over his mouth. Captain Sato kept her weapon pointed at the floor, her finger resting beside the trigger. Against a fully armed Dejarik marauder, bullets were a distraction at best, but a human in a tattered old t-shirt was a different story. Apparently the three intruders thought so too, because they paused just inside the entry, the alien still scratching its head, its fur rippling. The commander of the Beagle got right to the point. "I am Captain Sato of the Coalition Expeditionary Forces. This is my ship and you are intruders. I order you to set down your weapons immediately." The woman with the shoulder cape grunted. The man made a face as if he was considering the request before shrugging. "I have a counter-offer, Captain Sato of the Coalition Expeditionary Forces. How about you put down that fossil of yours before you blow another hole in your hull, and we have a friendly conversation, like civilized human beings?" The man's voice was cool and composed, any threat concealed in the holsters at his sides and the still bored-looking giant standing behind him. "Well, most of us anyways," he added. Leo studied all three of them, trying to gauge who was the most dangerous. Not the sloppily dressed man with the crooked smile. It was either the claw-handed girl with the annoyed look on her face or the hulking ape-like bruiser in the bathrobe. Regardless, there were only three of them, against a crew of nearly 40. The Beagle had strength in numbers, but pirates were pirates, and if everything Leo had heard was true, they would sooner just take what they wanted rather than ask for it, just like the Djarik. Leo knew the captain wouldn't want to risk the lives of any more of her crew. She would want to talk her way out of this if possible. "Who are you? What are your intentions?" Sato asked, her voice as steady as the hand holding her gun. The man in the sneakers scratched his chin. "If we're being perfectly honest, I could really go for an ice-cold beer right about now, but I'm guessing by the state of your ship that you're probably all out, so—" "We want your V," the girl with the robotic arm interrupted, earning her a dirty look from the man beside her. "I was getting to that," he hissed. "No, you weren't. You were trying to be charming and witty and failing." "I wasn't failing." The man turned and looked at the alien in the room. "You think I'm charming and witty, don't you?" The creature shrugged its massive shoulders. It appeared to have only 2 of them. 2 shoulders, 4 armpits, lots of fur and teeth. The girl focused her dark eyes on Captain Sato. "Ventasium," she repeated even more firmly. "You're too late," Captain Sato replied. "The Djarik attacked us 4 days ago. Took every core we had. They crippled the ship, injured several members of our crew, took one of us captive, and left the rest stranded." "See? I told you," the girl hissed at the man. "Yes, but I didn't listen to you," he retorted. "Because at some point, eventually, I know you're going to be wrong, and I want to take advantage of it. Besides, she could be lying." He looked back at Captain Sato. "Do you know who I am, Captain?" "I know what you are," Sato spat, her eyes narrowing. "You're pirates. Worse still, human pirates. Parasites feeding off your own kind, though you're obviously not very good ones if you have to pick an already crippled ship to steal from." "Not very good ones." The man shook his head and looked at the other 2 members of his crew. He reached for one of the pockets of his jacket, and Captain Sato raised her weapon level with the man's chest. In a flash, the girl with one arm had one of her own pistols unholstered, pointed back at the captain. The man put his hands up. "It's all right. I just want to show you something." He slowly removed a chip from his pocket and pushed a button. Instantly, the space between the pirates and the Beagle's crew was filled with a hologram of a man's face. Wry smile, gaunt, stubbled cheeks, thinning ginger hair. It was a coalition bounty notice. Leo had seen them flashed on the news feeds. The text underneath offered a reward of 8,000 pentars for the capture of someone named Bastian Daedalus Black, wanted for piracy and treason. 8,000 pentars was a freighter full of money. Captain Sato's eyebrows pinched. She looked at the hollow again, and then back at the man holding it. Bastian Black grinned. "I must not be too terrible a pirate if my head's worth 8Ks. That's just what your precious coalition is offering. There are others who would probably pay more." The girl beside him coughed. Bastian Black ignored her. "I don't think you would want to test someone with such a dangerous reputation. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Where's the V?" Captain Sato returned the pirate's stare. "If we had any Ventasium, do you really think we'd be sitting here waiting for some scudlicker like you to waltz in and take it?" The girl in the black uniform snickered. "Oh, so she's funny." The girl holstered her weapon with a sigh. "Are we finished here?" Bastian Daedalus Black hung his head for a moment, looking like a kid who's just been told he can't have dessert. He looked back at the captain of the Beagle, arms spread. "Fine. Obviously you've got a lot you're dealing with already, so we'll just get out of your hair and let you get back to it." The man from the one to notice had turned his back on Captain Sato and her pistol, his 2 companions following his lead. Leo shivered with relief. His first ever encounter with pirates, and the whole crew had come out unscathed. Maybe all the stories he'd heard about bands of cutthroat brigands from worlds that had rebelled against the coalition, ravaging its ships and terrorizing their crews, had been exaggerated. These 3 seemed content to leave empty-handed. Leave. It hit Leo suddenly what was happening. It must have hit Captain Sato at the same time because she hollered, "Wait!" and stepped quickly after them, her weapon falling to her side. "Wait, please!" The 3 intruders stopped and turned. "Please," she repeated. "We need your assistance. We've been stranded. We have no engines, no communications, no defenses. We have injured crew, limited supplies. If you could just take some of us, any of us, to go get help, to arrange for rescue." Bastian Black raised his hand, cutting her off. "You must have missed the part where I introduced myself. I am Bastian Black, wanted pirate. We are not in the rescuing business. We are in the taking whatever we want business. You were just fortunate enough not to have anything worthwhile. Unfortunately." "But we could find some way to repay you," Captain Sato offered, stepping closer, her voice thick with desperation. "The Coalition would compensate you for our safe passage. I'm certain of it." Bastian Black laughed. "And I'm certain that the moment I dropped you in Coalition hands, my own hands would be bound behind my back, and I'd be escorted to my own tidy little cell. Don't worry, Captain. If you're really that important to them, they will come find you themselves. And if not, well then, welcome to the universe. It mostly sucks." Captain Sato continued to plead. "Fine, forget passage, fuel, spare parts, supplies. If we could just get our communications fixed." Bastian Black's head dropped, cutting her off again. And in that moment, Leah thought maybe they were saved. The man was human, after all. Surely he wouldn't turn his back on others from his own planet. Not when their situation was so desperate. Leah was wrong. "Sorry, Captain," Bastian Black said, pointing to the patch on her uniform. "You picked your side." He turned his back to her once more. He made it 3 steps before Leo heard the click. The hammer cocked on Captain Sato's antique pistol, the one now leveled at the pirate's head. "In that case, I demand that you relinquish command of your vessel to me, or I promise to put a bullet straight through your traitorous pirate skull." It happened so fast. Too fast for Leo to scream out a warning, or for any of the crew to react. Too fast for Captain Sato. The pistol kicked out of her hand by a long black boot, sending it spinning across the floor of the bridge. In another second, the girl with the bionic arm had the Beagle's commander by the throat, lifting her off her feet, legs kicking. Leo felt his brother tense beside him, about to charge. "That's enough, Cat." Bastian Black nodded, and the girl let go. Captain Sato collapsed to her knees, hands to her neck, sucking in ragged breaths. Leo's hand went to his own throat instinctively. The pirate knelt next to Captain Sato, but he continued to speak loud enough for everyone in the bridge to hear. "That was a mistake," he said. "Don't make another one." He stood up and addressed the entire crew. "I will leave what food I can spare in your hangar, but if you make any more attempts to follow us or prevent us from leaving, I will be forced to do something that will double the price on my head." Captain Sato, leaning on one hand, motioned for the crew to stay back with the other. She whispered something to Black that Leo couldn't hear, though it might have been more of a hiss. "I've been called worse," he said. Leo watched from the side door as the 3 pirates disappeared through the main bridge door, leaving the captain on the floor, the remaining crew of the Beagle surrounding her, helping her to her feet, all of them talking at once. Leo felt like he should join them, to try and help somehow, when he felt a tug on his arm. "Let's go," Gareth said. "Go where?" Leo's brother was pulling so hard it seemed like he might rip his arm out of his socket. And unlike that furry beast in the bathroom, Leo didn't have extras. Gareth flashed him a look. The same look he got when he stood on the starting line back home, waiting for the gun to go off, his race face. Leo knew that whenever his brother got that look, it meant he had a plan for how he was going to win, and nothing would stand in his way. "Gareth, where are we going?" Leo asked again. "We are getting out of here," his brother said. How do you pack an entire life, even a short one, into a suitcase half your size? How do you shove 10 years into a bag that, as your father constantly reminds you, you'll have to carry yourself? You start by leaving most of it behind. "You won't need clothes," Dr. Fender said to his 2 sons. "The Coalition will supply uniforms for the duration, and no soap or toothpaste. All of our necessities are provided. Food, clothing, medicine, they will take care of us." Leo wouldn't even need his old inhaler, but when he decorated with Spider-Man stickers, they gave him a new one, a better one. "Just pack the particulars and the peculiars, the things that matter to you but no one else," his father said. Gareth packed his running shoes and the medal from his first ever cross-country championship, as well as 30 of his most valuable comics, carefully preserved in plastic. They could download any book or vid or game they wanted to on their data pads, of course, but there was no way Gareth was leaving his great-grandfather's Avengers #1, close to a century old and still in near mint condition, behind. Leo spent hours staring at the inside of his suitcase, imagining everything that might fit, the toys in the plastic bins beside his closet, the wooden trunk full of magic paraphernalia by his bed from back when his wannabe magician of a mother was teaching him sleight of hand. His pillow? They would have pillows on board the ship, obviously, but a head gets used to a certain spot, nestled between familiar lumps formed over time. In the end, Leo decided to scrap the suitcase and picked a backpack instead, the blue one he'd used for school. In it he threw some trick cards, his mother's favorite Svengali deck, a stuffed rabbit named Houdini, a picture of Amos. He decided to hold on to his old inhaler, just in case. Then he carefully selected a few of the more unusual seashells that had lined his bookshelves and wrapped them carefully in a sock. Most of the rest of the stuff in his room he could leave behind, he decided. Finally, he grabbed his watch from his dresser and slapped it to his wrist. He stood in the doorway of his bedroom, the only one he'd ever known, taking it in one last time. Through the window on the other side he could see the ships, Ikari and human alike, studying the smoggy sky. Used to be they were all only Ikari ships, but that was before the worst day of his life, before the war came right to their doorstep. Now, the factory outside the town sped out starfighters instead of SUVs. Trust me, this is for the best, his father told Leo as they got out of the hover car aboard the Beagle, a hulking, bulbous behemoth that had been designed for reliability over speed and was depressingly devoid of weapons. It looked massive, though Leo's dad told him it would only have a crew of 40 or so. Isn't she beautiful? Dr. Fender asked. Darwin would be proud. Leo knew who Charles Darwin was, and if Charles Darwin had suddenly found himself staring at a spaceship capable of jumping between star systems, he'd probably have freaked all the way out. I think it'll be good for you, Dad continued. I bet the moment we get out there, your asthma will start to clear up, get away from some of the smog. Besides, there's this whole huge galaxy for us to explore. We're fortunate, really. Not everyone gets this opportunity. Most wouldn't, Leo knew, like Amos and Mrs. Tinsley, and billions more humans who couldn't afford their own ticket into space, who weren't famous scientists like Leo's father, who didn't want to join the coalition military or volunteer to be a colonist on an industrial mining world. There were many ways off the planet, but few of them were easy. Staying would be easy, Leo thought, if only his father would let them. Dr. Fender crouched down and took his son's hands. I'm sorry, Leo. We have to do this. We have to think about the future. The Earth isn't going to be around forever. We did too much damage to it early on and tried to make up for it too late. Even the Ikari, as good as they are, won't be able to save it. By the time you're my age, it might not even be habitable. Everyone will have to leave eventually. Not Mrs. Tinsley. No, probably not Mrs. Tinsley. Though if there were enough ships, I'd tell her that she should go too. I know it doesn't seem like it, but it's better to go now, when we have the choice, when we can pick our destiny, than to be forced out later. But this wasn't Leo's destiny, it was his father's. He was the one who had been recruited by the coalition. There were days Leo looked at his prize-winning astrophysicist father with a choking swell of pride. Today wasn't one of those days. Trust me, once we get out there, everything is going to change. You can't even begin to comprehend the kinds of things you'll see. Things that I could only dream about at your age, things that I did dream about at your age. But where are we going? Wherever it is, I promise to keep you safe, his father assured him. Leo knew nowhere was completely safe. Not really. He looked at the gigantic ship, his home for the foreseeable future. 1 year, 3 years, 5, 10? He had no idea how long he would be on it. It didn't look at all like home. Home had curtained windows. Home had a cement sidewalk and grass that tickled the backs of your knees when you laid out in the sun. Home was finite, fathomable. It was a space you could fill. Out there was just emptiness, cold and black forever and ever. Dr. Fender held Leo's hand and tried to pull him along, but Leo dug in. He tried to think of something, anything, that could change his father's mind, convince him to let their family stay. There was one. What about Mom? Dr. Fender closed his eyes for a moment before letting out a long sigh. Leo hoped it was a sigh of defeat, but it was something else. A memory, maybe? Or a promise made? He opened his eyes again and fixed them on his son. This is what she would have wanted, Leo. She would have wanted us to take care of each other. And that's just what we are going to do. For her. His father stood, and Leo knew it was over. He had no more magic tricks left. He reluctantly shuffled his feet along the path to the boarding ramp and stared at the opening of the beagle, looking like the mouth of a giant whale, a ramp for its tongue. He took one last look behind him at the only home he'd ever known, past the landing zone and over the rows of buildings to the swatch of trees gleaming emerald green in the distance. He felt a hand slip into his own. Don't worry, Gareth whispered. I've got your back. He gave Leo's hand a squeeze. It won't be so bad. But Leo could hear the same doubt in his brother's voice. Gareth knew, just like Leo. He knew from experience. Nothing good ever comes from leaving the ones you love. The threats presented by the Djarik and their allies to our country, our planet, our entire civilization are unlike any we have ever seen before. At no point in human history has our fate hung so precipitously in the balance. But at no point in human history have we come together as a species the way we have in this moment. We will fight back, together, united by a single purpose, to protect our planet and ensure the survival of humanity, taking our rightful place among the peace-loving races of the galaxy. Gabriella Jackson Hale, President of the United States of America, State of the Union Address, 2051. Thank you.